Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ken Landon. Citywide TV presents 3 words, and you've heard quite a bit of it lately. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. On our show, we're going to talk with some people who are very involved in this movement that started about 2013 with the death of Trayvon Martin. They're going to talk about this movement in Shreveport and Caddo Parish and what they're doing to make a difference in our society. And let me thank all 3 of you all for coming on the show. It's really great to have you all. We've heard so much about, Craig, Black Lives Matter. And I'm thinking it's 2016. It's not 1916. It's not even 1966 or 1956 or whatever. Why is there a need for a movement like this in 2016?
Well, first off, Ken, thanks for the invitation to come on the show. The reality of the situation is the Black Lives Matter movement is actually not a movement. There have been people doing work to advocate the value of Black lives since we came out of slavery, even during slavery. So this is nothing new in terms of the echoing. Now, this is the first time that you have a group of people who are trying to appease and appeal to whites to basically say, hey, we matter when it comes to police brutality and police murder. But as it relates to the valuation of Black lives, if it doesn't matter to ourselves, then it's not going to matter to our oppressor. So this is a red herring movement, so to speak. I call it a pseudo movement because the branding and messaging should be stop police brutality and murder against Black people. But when you say Black Lives Matter, then Black lives need to matter beyond the realm of police murdering ourselves. And this is the real big conflict. So with me having logged in this year 21 years of grassroots empowerment work, my message to those who are echoing Black Lives Matter, well, why doesn't it matter when a 9-year-old child is murdered by so-called Black gangsters in Chicago or babies getting murdered? And so they've basically co-opted individuals behind this particular messaging, BLM, to get people in, and the real movement is advocating for the Black LGBT community because that's who the powers that be have put over this. So it's a very clever game that's being played that uses Black lives being murdered by police and whatnot throughout the country to give the illusion that we're talking about something that we really aren't.
Let me ask you this, Robert, who's there, and I got my hat on. That's something different. Maybe
It's jazz.
first time I guess it's all right. I didn't even think about it. But anyway, since it's on, we're talking. Go ahead, Robert. Let's talk a little bit about. And Craig is saying this pretty much is not a movement because this is just an extension of what's happened since slavery to show the importance and the significance of Black lives. But you were part of a rally of a movement, last year. Why get involved with something like this? Is this any different than any other movements or any other rallies that have happened in the past to really make people aware that Black lives matter, Black lives should be accounted for?
Well, to somewhat piggyback off of what Craig said is, I wouldn't consider it a movement. I would consider, in the beginning it might have started out with good intentions, but again, you got to go back, look at the Black Panthers and other groups who advocated against police brutality. Again, you have to understand and ask questions. Where is the source of funding for this movement coming from? If you understand who George Soros is, then you will understand the reasons why I'm against what this movement has become. Because in the beginning, it might have started out with good intentions, but it has been corrupted by powers that does not have the best interest of the Black community at hand. Because if you go and look, the leaders of this movement is basically, like you said, pushing the gay and lesbian and transgender movement upon our people.
So when did this transition happen, according to you? Because it said, so you agree with it when it first started, and I think I was reading it, the movement started around 2013. After the acquittal of George Zimmerman that we are all familiar with in the shooting death of African-American teenager Trayvon Martin. So you were on board with the movement then. So when did you see that it was transitioning to something other than what you think it should be?
Well, I must clarify, I was really not on board because it was really an unheard of movement. It really didn't get grounds until Michael Brown's death in Ferguson. But then that's when George Soros came in, put the $34 million behind it, and from that point on, it's been deteriorating ever since. Because my whole point of view, and again, it's piggybacking off Craig said, if Black Lives Matter, how come you're not up there in the black neighborhoods in Chicago where you had almost just this year 100 and some black people get shot by other black people? So if Black Lives really matter, we have to take it beyond this media indoctrination, basically trying to get our people to run out their head first and face these police. Basically what the movement has become is a propaganda tool. And they're using these deaths, because you got to stop and think about it. The police, they've been killing us since we've been here. The whole system of police in America was created to what? Catch slaves and return property. It was never, meant, the police were never meant to.
So serve and protect.
That was never meant for the police. They was meant, the police, basically police was created to catch runaway slaves. So we always been having police brutality. It's just that now everybody has a cell phone. And you could put it, now think about it, give you a classic example, I'm gonna shut up. Show you how the media is using this to dictate what happens. Everybody here in Shreveport, Louisiana, is all about Laquan McDonald Daniels, a young man who took a knife to a gunfight with the police. And we all in Shreveport, Louisiana, talking about justice for Laquan McDaniel, but nobody's talking about the brother who was killed here in Shreveport a couple of months ago by the police. Almost same scenario. There's actually been 3 black men murdered in Shreveport over the last year and a half. Where's Black Lives Matter for that? So it's basically, in my opinion, being used by media to create more destabilization.
Okay, let me ask Constance, who's sitting here, beautiful young lady in the middle of you all. You have 3 sons, and we've often been told that our sons are certainly targets, and mothers are always afraid. I hear it all the time when their sons leave home, whether they're going to return or not for whatever reason. So what are your fears? And when you look at Black Lives Matter, so how do you look at this organization or this movement or whatever you're calling it?
So I am definitely pro Black Lives Matter, and I do have 3 sons. I raised them along with their father in Texas. I started out when they were little bitty boys, because they're stair steps, speaking to them about how they're supposed to act in a public. I raised my sons. I am an educated black woman. I raised my sons in a middle class area, which means that my sons had special challenges in which to face, similar to what Trayvon Martin had to face. So I was one of those parents that said, if you go somewhere, if you tell me this is where you're going, this is where you need to be. If you decide to change directions, you need to communicate with me. If you have any altercations, I'm the adult, allow me to handle it. Okay, I've had those instances where I've had the police knock at my door, where my sons have gone to the community pool, but because they didn't have their ID, we had to prove that we lived there. So what is my fear? Yes, as an African American woman, yes, that my sons can do the same things that my counterpart white women's sons can do. But my sons face being shot or long prison terms. And my white counterpart sons, they don't have the same worries that I have at night.
So you still, let's Craig, and I'm listening to Constance, and of course we've heard this because, like they say, this movement, that's what I'm going to call it. This is what they're saying, this activist movement, even though you may have a different term, a different verbiage for it. Should young African American males, fear the police? Is there something that parents should teach their children when they leave home, just as Constance Love has said, that a lot of us as parents do? I have 2 sons. We say, okay, if there's an altercation, if you're stopped. I remember Judge Shiva Sims, she had this seminar, I don't know how many of you all went to it, it was called, Know Your Rights. And one of the things that Judge Sims said at that time is that when you're stopped, go ahead and do the things that are asked for you. And if you feel like you've been violated, then, take care of that later. But, don't retaliate, don't speak out of turn, don't do anything that would cause this officer, to do something to you that you may not be able to explain later because sometimes they have the upper hand in certain cases. So should there be more conversation, especially for our young black males?
Oh, I mean, without a doubt. Ken, Constance said something that really puts the light on where the confusion is in the black community. Mm-hmm. She said her son should be able to do the same things that her counterparts' children. Now, see, this is the illusion that we're under as black people in this country. Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 3 of the United States Constitution refers to you, me, and everybody on this panel as 3/5 of a person. That's the reality of America. This country is founded on white supremacy, racism, and the murder, rape, and oppression of our people. This is the reality. Mm-hmm. After 1865, after the Civil Rights, Civil War was ended, we went under a period of what is called black codes, and this is what Robert was talking about. The orchestration of the penal system in a very good book chronicled by a white gentleman by the name of Slavery by Another Name, the title of the book. Lays the foundation as to what this game really is. So if you continue to play this game like you can allow your children to do the same things that white children, you're going to keep on getting the same results. So yeah, there's a special education that has to go on for our black children, and the truth has to be told so that they understand, dude, this game has never been set up for you. We have to push in order to get the public policy structure whereby now your lives can actually matter. But if they don't matter to you, if they don't matter to us, they damn sure can't matter to those who oppress you.
Okay,
it's really that simple.
All right, we're going to take a break. But I was reading different articles about Black Lives Matter, and there are some law enforcement officials or some places, they're saying that this is a racist organization. That there's no racism in most law enforcement agencies, and this is just another tactic that African Americans want attention. So we're going to address that when we come back. I'm sure you all read and heard that. So we're talking about Black Lives Matter, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. So stay with us.
Let's go for a ride down the road of life to Wonderland. You find it's one of a kind. Don't know when it's coming round, but we're not backing down. Still want to touch the feel, the fabric of our lives. The touch, the feel of cotton, the fabric of my life.
Since 1970, Christian Service has helped the less fortunate within our community. Keeping with the vision of Sister Margaret, we serve 2 hot meals a day, 364 days a year. Now, feeding our community has become an even greater challenge, and Christian Service is in need of your help. Partner with us by making a donation that will allow Christian Service to continue treating our less fortunate with dignity, love, and hope. Call us today at 221-4857.
As an American, it's hard to hear that we have a serious hunger issue in our country. And as a parent, it's even harder to hear that 1 in 5 of our kids struggles with hunger, especially when billions of pounds of good food are wasted every year. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide billions of meals to families in need right in your community. Visit feedingamerica.org to support Feeding America and your local food bank. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it. I know. Come alive with the forest. The dad was cute.
They were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
All right, we're talking about Black Lives Matter, and it's been a very publicized activist movement for probably the last 3 years or so, and probably has really gained a lot of steam in the last couple of years. That you've probably read articles, if you watch CNN, if you watch the news and read the newspaper, you have seen signs and on car, license plates and shirts and that say Black Lives Matter. But before I went to the break, we were talking about, some places, law enforcement feel that this is a racist organization, and that it's just going to cause more divisiveness in this country. That law enforcement is really out, to serve and protect, and that's what they do. It's another tactic that African Americans are using to get attention and to make law enforcement out to be the bad guys. So I know you were speaking correct. Let me see what are your thoughts on that, Constance?
So I do not believe that Black Lives Matter is African Americans placing the race card. Number one, I was in a play down at Crystal Stairs in August called A Sunday Morning in the South. And the writer of that play was part of the movements in the early 1920s about anti-lynching. Okay, and I do believe that we're at that same spot right now. So there was a time, and it's still that way here in 2016, if an African American was accused of a wrongdoing, that instead of us having an opportunity to go in front of a panel of our peers, we were lynched. And that's the same thing that's happening today. At the end of the day, I want the same liberties. I want my sons. My sons are not perfect. If my sons do something to break the law, I want them to go through due process. I don't want them murdered in the street. So do I believe that we need to have laws in place for changes? Yes, we do. And that's the reason why I believe that it is important that we sit down with the police officers and talk to them about when you go onto a scene, how you're supposed to handle situations.
Now let me ask you this, Constance, because Craig is saying, regardless to what you think, even in 2016, your sons will not have the same rights of the liberties that others have. That's Craig saying. He's saying I'm a realist, and even though we want that, is that reality?
Okay, so I do not believe that we actually have the same rights. Do I believe we can get to that point where we will? Yes.
Okay.
And the reason why, number one, now I'm not going to sit up here and drop names and talk about books. I'm not going to, and authors, I'm not going to do that. But everyone is very familiar with Emmett Till. The murder of Emmett Till was the segue to the civil rights movement.
Was that 1955?
About that time in Greenwood, Mississippi, because my father is from Tutwiler, Mississippi.
Okay.
So that was an African American mother, like myself, who sent her son down in Illinois, the Midwest, sent her son down to the South, had the conversation with her son, just like I had the conversation with my sons, okay? Which I have no control. Once my sons hit that door, what they do. She had that conversation, right? He decided to whistle at a white woman. His grandfather, in my opinion, did not have the courage,
His uncle.
or whoever he was, his family member, his uncle, did not have the courage or the balls to protect that young man. And as a result, he was killed. Then we all know that the perpetrators of these crimes went to trial and was found not guilty. And she said, I want you to open that casket because I want America to see what they have done to my child. And as a result of her doing that, prior to that, African American males knew that they were the strange fruit on the tree. But once they saw that their children were being a target, and that these women, mothers, were starting to stand up and say, we are tired of this, that's when some of the civil rights movement started. And I believe, yes, with Trayvon Martin, with Michael Brown, that we're not going to change everything 100%, but we do need to voice our opinion collectively and ask for something to change.
That's a great point. So, Robert, so how do we change this? If you don't feel that Black Lives Matter, I mean, I'm sure you feel that way. I'm using the theme, the wording of that, because you say it's changed since it first started. What needs to happen? What needs to take place in this country, in the United States of America, that black lives will be respected, and that there will be equal rights. And when a black person is stopped or questioned, that he or sometimes she, because we know we did have an incident where this young woman, I forget, was that
Sandra Bland.
Texas? Was Texas somewhere?
Oh, Texas.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Sandra Bland.
what needs to happen, Robert, when we're talking about this?
First and foremost, you got to take care of home. Basically, I mean, I'm just put it like this, give you a brief history. But slavery has never changed. When they wrote that piece of paper saying all men were created equal, we were standing on auction blocks next to chickens, cows, and pigs. So that tells you what they have thought of, and they still think of us. Now, what's happening today, you got neighborhoods that are literally war zones. You got neighborhoods here in America that resemble what's going on in Iraq. So now you asking a bunch of mentally ill, coward white dudes with a badge to come into your neighborhood
Absolutely.
and patrol. I mean, 9 times out of 10, beyond, the police don't come into your neighborhood till a crime has been committed, outside of the regular patrols they do. So first and foremost, how you gonna ask a person who's been oppressing you for 400-some years to all of a sudden love me and stop killing me? When they see you killing yourself at a rate, you know what I'm saying, of almost 8,000 people a year. Again, that Black Lives Matter, how come they're not out there championing the almost 300-some thousand black children who are being aborted every year?
Well, let me ask you this. And Craig, I think, alluded to this, but you know, that's part of what I was reading. You know, we talk about this movement or this organization, Black Lives Matter, but then I read these articles from different people who are saying, okay, what about black on black crime? They're saying that, you know, if we look in this country, they're saying that, you know, the number of people that police officers have killed, black people, does not even compare to the number of black people who kill black people.
Absolutely.
So when we say Black Lives Matter, are we just thinking about, you know, the black people who are killed by police officers or other white people? What about all of this we're seeing in Chicago, where parents, mothers, you know, like Constant, are afraid for their children to even go in the front yard, less than only walk down the street to the park?
And that's the point that I'm making to you. It's the brand. This was a marketing campaign to now get black folks to buy into something that's a red herring. Because if Black Lives Matter, you have to start with yourself first. And so, and I'm not saying anything different than what Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey said, because you have to have an ethical position. You cannot demand that somebody else clean up their yard if you ain't cleaned up your own yard. Right. And so we're asking people to value and respect us, but we don't value and respect ourselves. So this is where the dilemma comes in. So because this was just about the police murder and brutality of black folks, all you gotta now do is say, stop police murder and violence against black people. You wouldn't have no disagreement. But they branded it something to be all encompassing. And if it's all encompassing, you gotta deal with abortions, you gotta deal with us murdering each other. Now, here's an interesting thing. Do you know how many, do you know the largest group of people that were murdered by police officers last year? It was white people. There are more white people murdered in America by police officers than black folks. Now, there was a higher number of black people that were unarmed that were murdered by white folks, but by the white police officers. But there were more white folks that were actually murdered by the cops. Now,
are we looking at a percentage-wise?
No,
you know, sometimes
we're talking about the actual number.
Okay.
See, it doesn't matter about the percentage. Follow where I'm going.
Okay.
See, it doesn't matter about the percentage. The argument that's been created on the news media is that the police is killing all these black folks. You have not even heard the statistic that there are more white folks that get killed by the police officers than black people, have you?
No.
Why is that? See, that goes into the narrative of trying to get black folks to now get out here and confront police officers. And like Robert said, you're going to a gunfight with a knife and you're going to get dealt with. The majority of police officers, especially black police officers, and even the majority of white folks, are pretty much good folks. There are bad apples within that realm.
Right.
I deal with the police department. I deal with the sheriff department, FBI, not because I am a friend of law enforcement, but you got to be able to deal with these folks. But if you can't become self-policing, where old people and young people can actually go out of their house and not be afraid of getting killed by their own, you can't get any respect from anybody else.
Okay, Constance, I see you wanted to chime in.
Yes, on several things. Number one, I don't believe that it's a black person against white police officers. It's black people against police officers. Okay? Because in the situation in Maryland, there were black police officers that were involved. Okay? So I believe, number one, that there needs to be a retraining as far as how African Americans are treated by law enforcement. Okay? So the statement about when white people go into the black community, how they're treating African Americans, whether it's a white cop or a black cop, they still have that viewpoint. The majority of them have that same viewpoint of how to treat African Americans. So I think at some point, yes, we need to take a look at how police are being trained. How do they handle situations when they're called onto the scene? That's
But we
something
thought
that
we
needs to
had
be-
dealt with that training from what, Rodney,
No,
help
it
me with
wasn't
this.
Rodney King.
Rodney King,
No,
was that 91? Come on, help me with the year.
absolutely.
We thought, can we all just get along? We thought we were having sensitivity training and all of that and all that. We're going to have to take a break, and I
Okay.
want to let you speak. And I know Robert wants to speak. And what we're saying here, we know that there are more good police officers and people in law enforcement than there are bad. Like any profession, you have some bad apples, but we know that there are more good police officers in law enforcement. So we're not saying that everybody out there who has a badge on is a bad person. They're looking to stop someone who's an African American and do bodily harm to them. We're not saying that, but we know that it does happen. And so our show is talking about how we can change that or curtail that or make a difference. So stay with us and we'll be right back.
My grandfather served in World War II. Spending time with him were the best memories of my life. I became a physician at VA because of my grandfather, so I can help others like him. I can't imagine working with better doctors or a more dedicated staff. I'm fulfilling my life's mission with the help of my team and thanks to these veterans. I'm proud to be a doctor at VA and proud to honor my grandfather every day. Search VA Careers to find out more.
Hi, I'm Ben Utek. I played high school, college, and pro football, helping my team win the 2006 championship. That was an amazing day, but it can't compare to the joy I feel every day with my loving wife and 3 beautiful daughters. My football career ended after I suffered my 5th concussion. Did you know that over 1 million athletes suffer a concussion each year? That includes boys and girls, every age, every type and level of sport. It isn't always clear that a player has had a concussion, so parents, athletes, and coaches need to learn about concussion signs and symptoms. The American Academy of Neurology recommends athletes thought to have a concussion be immediately removed from play and not returned until assessed by a healthcare professional trained in concussion. This isn't just about sports. It's about your brain. When in doubt, sit it out. Learn more at aan.com/concussion. A message from the American Academy of Neurology.
I don't know why my son would ruin himself with alcohol. Breaks my heart. I don't understand why this is happening. My therapist recommended Al-Anon family groups. I didn't want to go to Al-Anon, but I'm glad I went. If someone's drinking breaking your heart, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or go to alanon.org.
All right, Black Lives Matter.